Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's virtual educational series by First State Bank and Trust. Today, Tara Pribno will provide us with the College Place presentation of Paying for College. The workshop provides insightful information for parents and students on college costs, federal and state financial aid, the free application for federal student aid, FAFSA, scholarships, learning the different components of student loans, and more. Tara will also speak about student loan forgiveness, what it is, who it is for. As you all know, this is an evolving and ever-changing topic. Tara Pribno is the College Place Director for ECMC of Minnesota. That's the Educational Credit Management Corporation. Tara focuses primarily on student success and outreach. We will have Q&A throughout the session today. If you have a question, all lines will be muted, so you can type your question in the chat box. If you're here with us in person, just raise your hand. Tara will answer questions throughout the presentation, and at the end, we'll give some additional time for additional Q&A. So I will now hand it over to Tara.
Thanks, Bob. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm really excited to be in Wisconsin. I am from Minnesota, as I said. My name is Tara Pribno, and I am the College Place Director for Minnesota. What does that mean exactly? I'm a college access provider, which I also didn't know what that meant when I started either. So college access work is done by different folks, depending on the organization. My organization is a nonprofit, so the work that I'm doing is for the community and it is for free. I'm not getting paid by the bank to be here. I don't represent a college or university, so I'm also, when students talk to me about like, well, where should I go to school? I never tell a student where to go. I help them with the tools to figure out where's going to be a great place for you to study, and let's look at those options and let's talk about it. So thank you again for being here. As Beth said, we're going to talk about paying for college today, which can be, I don't want to say it's a dry topic, but there's going to be a lot of information that we're going to be going through today. I do not expect everyone to really comprehend or understand every single thing. Really, the goal of what I want folks to understand today is what financial aid is, what is it used for, how does it work, and that's really what I want you all to get out of today, although we are going to be talking about some other things as well. So here's our agenda. So again, we're going to start off with talking about the cost of college. So how do you, where are we at in America? How much does it cost to go to college? We'll talk about the financial aid program. So that's going to be the FAFSA that we talked about, as well as the Minnesota DREAM Act for students who are not eligible to complete the FAFSA. I'm sorry, that was financial aid applications. Financial aid programs, we're going to be talking about federal financial aid programs. We're going to be talking about state programs that are available. We'll also go over some action items or what you can do as a parent or student to kind of start having these conversations at home. We'll do a quick review, and then I will leave you with some wonderful resources. So to get things started, we're looking at the average college cost. So this is from a national standpoint. So as you can see, most of us know, and if you don't, heading to a community college is going to be your least expensive option. Public colleges and universities, obviously a little bit higher there. And private colleges and universities, we see that bigger price tag. So just because this is the cost of college, the average, that's not necessarily what students are going to pay. That's kind of the sticker price, like, right, just like a car. When you buy a car, it's going to be way more. Unlike that, when you see a sticker price at college, there's a chance it's actually going to be less than that. It really depends on what you're choosing when you're selecting that college. So I did just want to show the difference between Minnesota and Wisconsin today. So this is also for per year, the average college cost. So for a public 4-year, you can see Wisconsin is actually a little bit less than Minnesota. Private 4-year, Wisconsin just a little bit higher. And then the public 2-year, Wisconsin comes in a little bit lower. So again, a student wanting to study in Wisconsin, it looks like overall would have just come out just a little bit less with those college costs. Again, this is an average. I want to let you know that this average includes tuition, room, and board, and we're actually going to break that down in just a second here. These numbers would look significantly different and a lot less if tuition or if room and board were not included. All right, so what are we paying for when we go to college? So we're paying for direct costs, which is your tuition and fees and your room and board. And then indirect costs, which are your books and supplies, transportation, and all of your personal expenses. So these are the things that come with that price tag, right? But you are in charge. The student is in charge. So a direct cost, that money that you paid at the college, there's not much you can do about the cost of tuition, right? You can't bargain with the cost of a credit at a college. The indirect cost is where you have a little bit more flexibility in how much you spend. So that means like for your transportation. If you're going to go to school really far away, like in Florida or something like that, you're going to have to think, well, how am I going to get back during winter break? I'm probably going to have to fly, right? That's going to be a really long car ride. So someone who's going to go away to school that's further away is going to spend more on transportation versus someone who maybe stays in state or close within driving range. So that's something that you're in charge of, right? Do I want to go somewhere far away where I'm going to have to spend more on transportation to get to and from home when needed, or if I'm going to stay closer? So that's another thing. Same with personal expenses, the things that we buy every day, right? Our shampoo, our toilet paper, things like that. College students have to buy those things too, right? We all do. So it's how much you're spending on those things that you have control over. Just to kind of pull this all together, so the COA, or the cost of attendance, it's an average. So your expenses are going to vary depending on student to student. So now that we know what we're paying for and we know the average of what we're, how do you know what it costs to go to college? Well, it's great. So the Department of Education actually requires every single college in the United States to have some sort of tuition price and cost on their website. Every single college is required to have that. Again, they're going to show the cost of attendance, which will vary by student, but that's a good idea. Okay, I know if I'm going to go here, it's going to cost around $22,000 a year. They've got to give you an idea of what that price is going to be. Also, so what this does, the calculator itself, there's another calculator. It's called the net price calculator. And I will send out any link that's in this presentation to Beth and Dick at the end so that they can share this with you. This website basically takes in your income, your assets, your household size, and it will help you kind of create that college cost for you. So there's a couple different options of figuring out how much it's going to cost depending on the college you want to attend. So do know that there are resources out there, and you're not going to go in blindly. You just need to do your research. All right, so now that we know the cost of college, we know the average cost of college, we know what we're paying for, let's figure out how we're going to pay for it. So this is kind of our bigger section today. We're going to start off by talking about what is financial aid. So financial aid is basically defined as money that comes outside of you or your family to pay for college. So financial aid can be really broken down into three different parts. The first one is the best one. That's going to be the aid that you don't repay. So this is going to be in the form of grants and scholarships. So that's the best kind of money, right, to get free money to pay for college. The second one is aid you must repay. So that's going to be in the form of loans. Obviously, we don't want a student to take out a loan if they don't need to, but it is an option. The third one is aid that you earn. So this is also would be probably, the second best. So work study and military assistance, we'll talk a little bit about what those are. But first we're going to talk about the fun stuff, which is the free money. So free money comes in different forms. We're going to first talk about federal grants. So remember, our free money are grants and scholarships. Grants, these are federal grants. These can be awarded to most students who fill out the FAFSA, or free application of federal student aid, which we'll touch on in a moment. Do know that with each of these grants, the Pell Grant is absolutely free money, and students who have come from a lower income family are most likely going to receive a Pell Grant. A Pell Grant is free money to the student that they do not have to pay back. And sometimes, students are like, well, why didn't I get the Pell Grant and my friend did? Well, the whole thing about the Pell Grant is it's really meant for the neediest students. So if your friend's family makes $100,000 a year, and they didn't get the Pell Grant, it's most likely because of the income of the family. If you're the person who got it, your family probably makes around $40,000 a year, showing that you do need aid, you do need help to help you through college. So when folks get upset that they didn't get a Pell Grant, I try to remember them that it really is, this whole program is meant for the financial neediest students, so those who generally come from a lower income family. The FSEOG is the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. This grant is also part of when you fill out the FAFSA, you may be eligible for. There's also a TEACH grant, so this is specific for students who are interested in teaching. And then there's also folks who have served Iraq and Afghanistan service grants. So all of these things you're going to be asked about when you fill out the financial aid form. And these are things that you could qualify for depending on either, if you were in the military, if you're going to be a teacher, if you're a student who has, more financial need than others. So those are federal grants. We also have, Minnesota also has specific grants for Minnesota students. The first one, the post-secondary childcare grant, is specific to students who are going to college that have children. So there are opportunities for that grant to pay for childcare when your children are in, or you have to go to class, right? And then your kids go to daycare. So there's ways to help families who are trying to go back to school or going to school for the first time. The Minnesota Indian Scholarship, this scholarship is for folks who are at least a quarter Native American. So folks that are in that group would only be, they're the only ones that are going to be eligible for that one. The Minnesota GI Bill. We've got the Public Safety Officer Survivor Grant. I won't go through each of these just because, again, this is a lot of information to take in. Really what I want folks to understand is that there are options. There are options for folks to pay for college. And these are just some of those options specific to Minnesota. The teacher grants, these are different than the one we just talked about from the federal side of things. For Minnesota teachers, there are opportunities if you want to teach in a community that is underrepresented. You sign up to, you apply for the grant and then you get money to pay for college, but then you make an agreement that you're going to work in a community that has a higher need. So there are different opportunities there for teachers as well. I was kind of telling Beth earlier, I'm not as well rehearsed on the Wisconsin side of things because I do serve the state of Minnesota, so I do not have any special Wisconsin grants for you. But if you are a Wisconsin resident, you may want to check out your Wisconsin Department of Education website to see what kind of things that they have. The Minnesota State Grant, this is something else in addition to helping fund for college. Again, this is free money. And this again is for students who need the money, who are have financial needs. So these are definitely going to be kids who have, students who have received the Pell Grant on that FAFSA, right? Our neediest students are going to get that free money first. The state of Minnesota does something very similar, where they also have a separate grant that is for need-based reasons. And the eligibility is pretty simple. You just have to have a high school diploma or GED, and you're going to attend a college in Minnesota. Pretty simple. So again, this one's going to be for students who have more financial need than others. Another thing that's pretty new, actually, this is pretty cool. This just came out last year, the Minnesota Future Together grants. So the whole point of this is the state of Minnesota wants to help students get students into those pathways, right, that are, we're experiencing some, healthcare, for example. We have the biggest population, the baby boomers, that are retiring at this time, right? So when you think about healthcare, who's coming up from the generations behind us that are going to fill those positions? I don't know. So same with, I guess healthcare being the biggest one, and just from experience knowing that healthcare, I think it's the top 15 out of 20 most needed jobs according to the statistics that we have out there. So along with STEM, so students interested in, the science, technology, business. So Minnesota has chose, if you're going to go to school for one of these things, we may have a grant for you. Again, just to try to get some of these careers going in the state of Minnesota with a little help with free money to do that. The eligibility, you must be a Minnesota resident, so I'm sorry to those in Wisconsin, would not be eligible for this. Right now, essentially, the money is going to run out. So they're running this program for as long as they can. So they're thinking it'll be through 2024. But the biggest thing is that, yeah, you returning to college, not being enrolled for the last 3 semesters. And again, as we can see, we'll talk about the FAFSA again, that application. It's showing, that family needs to make less than $100,000. So again, giving to the students who have the most financial need. Institutional funds, so this is another way to get free money for college. So institutional meaning a college or university. So they will have specific grants and scholarships based on that university or college that you're attending. And the way to find those is, let's say you want to go to Madison. Well, hop on the Madison website. Let's look and see what kind of programs they have. Let's see if they have grants and scholarships for students like yourself. What do they have to get me to want to come here, right? How are they going to help me pay for school? So do know that when we're talking about the free money, we know it comes from the state, we know it comes from the feds, and we also know that it can come from the college or university itself. And I just noticed I have said the word college a lot, and I want to just clarify. When I'm talking to folks, I want you all to know that college, when I speak about it, is basically everything. I'm not just talking about a 4-year college. I'm talking about a 2-year college, community college, a career and technical education, license, certificate, 4-year college. It doesn't matter. I just want everyone to know I kind of use it as a universal term, and it's really encompassing to all of those things. Because you may not know, but not everybody is fit for a 4-year degree. Not everybody is fit for a 2-year degree either. Some students just need to get out in the workplace. They need to get a certificate and they want to just get out there and start working. So any of those options are what I mean by college, just so I don't confuse anyone. Again, since I don't work for university or college, I'm not steering folks one way or the other on where to go. All right, scholarships. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because I do a lot of work in research with scholarships. It is something I do all the time. I've become a little obsessed with it actually. So scholarships, again, are free money. So we've moved from grants to scholarships. Scholarships can be created by pretty much anyone. So this bank, for example, could say, hey, we're actually going to create a $1,000 scholarship. We're going to do a drawing once a year, and it's for our members. It can be as simple as that. I am allowed to give away scholarships every year. I give away $2,000 worth of scholarships to students every year just on my organization. And I get to make the rules for what students are eligible for those, right? So sometimes we'll do like this. Coming up here in October, I'm going to be doing a series, and in order to encourage students to come, I'm going to have a scholarship. So if the students come to my sessions, you're going to get entered into a scholarship. So scholarships can come from everywhere, nonprofit organizations, banks, colleges. There's a lot of families, or actually what I've been learning a lot is a lot of law offices offer scholarships, and it's not just because of like a personal injury, but they believe in education and they want to help fund students' education. So there's a lot of random law offices all over the US. They're like, hey, we're giving $1,000 away, write this short essay and you'll be entered. So scholarships you can find in a lot of places is basically what I'm trying to say. I always advise students to check their high school. Their high school counselor should be in the know about what is a local scholarship. So if this bank had a scholarship, I would hope that the schools or organizations around here are aware of that, right? So they can tell their students, hey, there's a scholarship opportunity. You should jump on that. This is free money for college. Again, just in your local community, there's state organizations that do them, national organizations, again, in your college and university. So this is, again, a really great way to pay for college. I was telling Beth earlier that I could do, and I have done, an entire presentation on scholarships, the ins, the outs, the how-tos, what do you do, the components and things like that. We're just going to touch on it today just because I want everyone to know this is another way to pay for college. So when you're searching for scholarships or your student is searching for scholarships, ask around. Word of mouth is great. Your relatives, your neighbors, again, your high school counselors, your employers. There are often a lot of employers that offer scholarships to their employees. A great place to look. There's also a couple websites here and actually on this next page. And again, I will send these out to y'all and then take a look around if you're interested. The reason that we have posted these is because folks at ECMC have kind of vetted these and gone through these, and we think that they're appropriate for students. They're not a part of a scam or anything like that for students. So basically a student could go to any one of these websites, create a login and username, answer some questions about themselves, and that website is going to say, hey, you're eligible for all these scholarships, you should apply. So it's my favorite because it sometimes gets kids excited about free money. And when I talk about the different scholarship opportunities, for example, there's one every October and it's called the Zombie Apocalypse. Kids get really excited about this. But you write a really short essay, I think it's under 250 words or 500 words, about if your school got taken over by zombies, like how would you, like what would you do? And it's an essay, so kids get like excited about stuff like that. I know for the month of July, my scholarship of the month that I highlighted was, it's called Flavor of the Month. You literally talk about your favorite kind of ice cream in a short essay. So there's some really fun ones, right? You know, some kids get deterred like, I don't want to write an essay, but it's about your favorite ice cream. You could do that, right? Another one I like to promote that doesn't start until I think it's October or November is the Taco Bell Live Más Scholarship. That scholarship is a national scholarship and most students are eligible. Last year they wanted folks to make like a 2-minute video with some essay prompts or some questions that they asked. And so I'm telling kids, I'm like, y'all are on TikTok all day, right? You're making videos or you're watching videos. Like, why don't you just make a video for this scholarship and you could actually make some money out of it? I try to get creative, but the one thing about scholarship is that it takes work. Most scholarships just aren't going to knock on your door. They're not going to find students. Students and even parents can really help, you know, look at these legitimate sites, talk to folks in your workplace and things like that. So that's going to conclude. Oh, nope, sorry, one more topic. So we've just completed the free money. So the grants and the scholarships, our first chunk of financial aid. The second one is a little bit smaller, and this is going to be our earned aid. So this is another way to pay for college with the work study program. So federal work study or institutional work study essentially is if you are a student, you have an opportunity to work on campus, whether that's at the bookstore, the cafeteria. I have no idea. There's so many jobs on campus, right? And you earn a paycheck. You go and do your duties and you earn a paycheck. And so you're able to use that money for your expenses around school or your personal expenses or transportation, things like that, right? So the thing about work study is you're always a student first. And when you're working on campus, the folks that work with you know that you're a student first. So most times, you know, your schedule is really flexible with when your classes are and things like that. This is a great opportunity for students who, you know, think that they can work during school, right? And I don't believe you can work over 20 hours a week in a work study program just because, again, you're a student first. All right, is everybody ready? Okay, we are about to hit federal student loans. This is the third, you know, piece of financial aid. So we first talked about, again, the free money, the grants and scholarships. The second one we just talked about was earned aid. And I also want to touch on that if you were in the military, there are options for you as well, that you've already done your service. Earned aid can also be a part of that as well. So you're using those benefits to help pay for college. The third and final section of financial aid is based on the money that you borrow, or this is borrowed, right? So here we go, federal student loans. The first one is a direct subsidized loan. This is the best loan that you can borrow. Why? Because the interest is paid by the U.S. Department of Education while you're in college. The second one is the direct unsubsidized loans. Well, this isn't a bad loan, but it's different because the interest begins to accrue the day that the loan is dispersed. And unlike the subsidized, the U.S. Department of Education does not pay the interest. You as the borrower or the student are responsible for paying that interest. As of July 1st, 2022, the interest rates for both of these loans are at 4.99%. This has gone up since last year. a little bit, I think. Or actually, I think those went down, but the next one went up. So just so you know, the interest rates do change on these loans every single year. They start July 1st of every single year and end the following July. One thing that is, kind of interesting that I've learned is regardless of who the president of the United States is, that individual does not set these interest rates. These interest rates are set by Congress. So whether you're happy about these interest rates or not, it's really not on the president that's setting these, right? It's the folks below the president. It's just something I learned recently, and I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense. People get upset. The other loans that the federal government allows us to borrow are direct plus loans. So there's two different kinds, rather. The grad plus, these are for graduates and professionals. These are what students apply. So that's basically when you've kind of run out of some of the money that you've already received and you need some more. The parent plus loan, the parents apply. So the parents are responsible for that loan. Both plus loans, this is definitely went up. This year is 7.54% is the interest rate. So as you can see, it's beneficial to borrow the subsidized loan first, subsidized, unsubsidized, and then the plus loans, kind of in the order. Do we have a question?
I was going to say, when you say the rates change every July 1st, if I take out a loan today, does that mean that's a variable rate loan until I get it paid off, or am I locked in?
That's a great question. You are not locked in. So it changes every year. Yeah.
Cool. So my daughter has an unsubsidized loan, so to kind of piggyback on his question, so if she applied for one, had it last year, she doesn't start paying it until she's out of college.
Correct.
But she'll pay the rate that she, when she applies.
Yes, and I think I actually just misspoke. I apologize, because I personally still have student loans, and I'm still paying, I think it's like 4% So I lied. It's when it's taken out, that's the interest rate that you pay. So the students who are going to borrow money this year, they're going to have that percentage. I'm still paying on my 3.99 or 4 or whatever. So folks who had student loans from a long time ago, you're probably still at the interest rate. Sorry about that. And to your question, with the subsidized loans, so both subsidized and unsubsidized, you do not have to start paying on your loans until 6 months after graduation. Now, that's only if you are in school for full time. If you drop below part-time, which is 8 or less credits, you are gonna have to start paying on your loans. So one thing that I wish I had done when I was in college is I wish I had paid the interest on my loans. I was working, I could have afforded it, and I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know if someone maybe didn't tell me that, if I just didn't understand at 18 years old. But if you, as a parent, can maybe help out your kid with the interest while they're in school, or if you can encourage your child to pay that interest while in school, it's really, really beneficial. Because, and that's on the unsubsidized loan, sorry, because the subsidized loan, the federal government is paying the whole time. But yeah, something I definitely wish I would have known. All right, so I don't want to go over all this, but I just want folks to know that when you take out a federal loan, there are loan limits, and those limits depend on what year you are in school. So like the first year, you're going to go to college, you don't get that much money from loans. Now, you might not even be eligible for the full amount, but as a first year student, $5,500 is what you can get on a student loan. So as you see, as it goes up, like your second year, there's a little bit more. Your third year, the graduate, and then there's an absolute cap of $138,500 for graduate or professional students. And as you see, there's a note that $65,500 can be in subsidized loans, but that's the max. So when students are taking out loans, this is something to understand. You know you're going to go to a college that's going to cost you $20,000 a year, and you're only going to get $5,500 in loans. You're going to have to come up with some other money, right? So you want to be looking for those grants. You want to be applying for those scholarships, figuring out how am I going to pay for this gap. So we're going to shift a little bit. So We're going to talk about student debt because that is one of the reasons why I'm here today. And so the reason you see the states that you do, so aside from Wisconsin, these are all the states that I have a peer in. So I do this in Minnesota, and we have folks that do this in 6 other states. And so we just kind of put these together as kind of a compare and contrast. So this is from the class of 2020. The Institute for College Access and Success provided us these numbers. So on a national level, it's about $30,000 for a student to be in student debt. I did add Wisconsin just because I was like, well, I'm going to be in Wisconsin. And as you can see, based on what we showed before, the cost of college in Wisconsin is just a little bit less than Minnesota. So that kind of makes sense that you would maybe have to take out less loans, right, to go to school in Wisconsin. So while those numbers don't look horrible, that's a lot of money for a student at 20-some years old to walk out of college and have this much debt. We also know that this is an average. We know that there are students that have way more debt than that. I can see you laughing over there. Is that you? I do also, well, I think $30,000 is a lot. I really do. So here's kind of where we're at right now. So this again is from the same resource. So right now we've got 43.4 million borrowers in the US that have federal student loan debt. So remember, that's federal because personal is different. Here's the damage, like almost $1.8 trillion is what we're looking at right now. And I know that number has changed in the last year. It's gone up. It doesn't seem to be going down. This is the federal loan balance. So the difference being that, you know, some of it isn't from the federal loan in that first 1.7 trillion. This represents 91.2% of student debt. So we know that a majority of student debt is housed in the federal side, the ones that have our loans. The average, you probably can't see that, can you? Yes. Huh. Okay, so here's where we're at. So this is showing a little bit different than what we just saw because this one's a little bit newer statistic, but this is showing 37,000. Oh, and then I think there's one more stat on here. Oh, sorry. There you go. And that is going to be, here's about the interest that a student pays each year. So again, if you're able to help your student, or if you are a student yourself, if you can afford to pay the interest while you're going to school, I highly recommend it. Because that number just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and added to your loan. The average student borrower spends about 20 years paying off their loans, 20 years. So, and please don't share if you don't feel like it, but who in this room has a student loan? Am I the only one? Okay. Did anyone have one that they paid off? Woo! Okay, cool. Did it take y'all 20 years?
No.
Okay. I thought that number was pretty big myself, but then again, we're all different students in this room, right? We all went to school for something different. We all went somewhere different. Our cost of attendance was different for each of us. Our financial situation was different. So when you're talking to a student who needs to borrow money and you share that statistic with them, that's kind of scary. It's really scary. And one of the things that I try to relate with students is just the other night I was doing a presentation and I asked the room, I said, who here in the room, raise your hand if you can afford to buy a car right now with all the money in your savings or whatever. Who's got that money? Good job. So no one in the class raised their hand, which I'm not surprised. They're all under 18, right? I don't know who's got, I don't know. I don't even know what it costs for a new car anymore. It's ridiculous. It also depends on what you get. And I asked the same question. I said, well, then that probably means you don't have enough money for a house then either, do you? And they're like, no. I said, well, here's the thing. When you want to buy a car, most folks can't just go to the dealership and hand over the cash. They have to get some sort of financing. They have to take out a loan that they'll pay on every single month so that they can drive their car. It's the same thing with a house. We all have to have somewhere to live with, whether it's rent, whether it's a loan. We're paying money every month to live somewhere. So the difference is that with a car and a house, those things depreciate. I know we can put money into our house to make it, better. We can make money on our house, but a car usually is going to depreciate. So if you're going to spend money and take out a loan, do it for your education, because your education, your certificate, your degree, whatever you receive can never depreciate. No one can ever take that away from you. It won't burn down like a house. It won't break down like a car. And so when I tell that to students, they kind of look at me and I'm like, this is an investment in yourself. It's not an investment in something. It's an investment in you. And so I try to kind of like level set, like most adults can't afford to buy a house or a car. Most adults can't afford to pay for college out of pocket either. It's normal if you have to take out a loan. Most students have to take out a loan. The thing about taking out loans, though, is that you really want to be responsible when you're borrowing. Don't take out more than you need. That's a mistake that I actually did. I'm not proud of. When they said, oh, you can take $3,300 and my classes only cost $2,000, I was like, well, I'll take the rest, That was silly. I would not advise that. So anyway, just kind of, helping students understand that it's okay to take out a loan. Again, it's your investment. It's forever. So we know this is a straight, again, I just took the statistics. So everyone may be familiar with the CARES Act, right? There's so many different pieces of that act, but as we know, one of them affected federal student loans, and it affected 35 million borrowers. I am one of them because I do have a student loan. So we're at a 0% interest rate right now until August 31st. Who in this room thinks that we are going to extend? Okay, I'm just curious. I have no idea what's going to happen. This has been extended multiple times, as we know. Yes.
Does that mean that they still have to make principal payments, or are payments completely shut down?
They're completely shut down.
So there's a reckoning.
So for the past 2 years, my student loans have not gained any interest. They've been sitting exactly where they were from, I think it was March 1st of 2020.
You haven't had to pay.
I have not had to pay on them. Now, I am taking a different approach than some students, and I am actually paying on them, but I have reasons. I get reimbursed, so it kind of makes sense for me to do that. But for some students, if you've got credit card debt or you're paying on a car or a home, some students chose to not pay that because they were able to catch up on other things. So really the whole idea was to help folks through COVID, right? We were all struggling. So that's where we are right now. We know in a couple weeks that a decision has to be made. Our president has got to make a decision on what is going to happen. Are we going to forgive $10,000? Are we going to forgive $50,000? Who's going to get it? Who is not going to get it, right? There's a lot going on, and I feel like every time I pull up a news article, something is changing. So what I did pull up was, this is just from a Forbes article from I think 2 days ago, so the most recent I could find. There are two different things happening right now. So, and we're not here to be political, right? Because it doesn't matter, but know that Democrats have suggested one act and the Republicans have suggested another act about student loans. I'm not telling you who is who because I don't even remember and I don't care. But so the first one is leveraging opportunities for Americans now. So both acts are really talking about making student loan interest like 0% or super low percent. So these are kind of all the details. These, I believe, were just being talked about. Anyway, so the next one is the 0% Student Loan Refinancing Act. So this is going to help students refinance their loans that they already have. This is also going to do the 0% interest rate. I don't have an opinion, nor will I really share an opinion. However, I am really interested in if the government would go to a 0% interest rate, because that means they won't be making any money off of us. I do know that a friend of mine lived in Sweden for 30 years, so she has dual citizenship here and there. And her kids went to college in Sweden, and I believe their rate is 1%. Their loan rate is 1% for their loans. So meaning it's more affordable for students to pay back, right? It's not the 7% we just saw or that 5% that we just saw. And it's fair for everybody, right? If you have the same percentage for everybody every single year over and over and over again. So we know that there's another country that has done, I think, at least 1%. But yeah, so these are the things that Congress has come up with. I don't know what the president is going to do. I mean, there are so many options. There are pros and cons to forgiving. My personal note is, if we're going to forgive, okay, but what about the students that are coming up now? What about all of the kids now that are in college? What's going to happen to them? They're going to be in the same boat in 40 years that we are. We're going to have trillions of debt again if they don't fix something for the future. So my concern is really about the future of loans, and how is it going to be more affordable for students to go to college. So that's kind of what I'm hoping, is that there's some sort of a plan, like whether, it's community college being more affordable just to get kids, in college, or whatever it is. I guess when I'm teaching students now and sharing this information about what could happen to folks that have loans now, what does that mean for them? Because like I said, they're going to end up in the same boat that we all were with our loans if we don't change something. Now, I don't have the answers, and I don't know what the right thing is, but all right, so I do want to talk really quickly about the Minnesota self-loan. Again, this is actually for Wisconsin residents as well, if you are going to a college in Minnesota. So again, this is a loan, but this is not a federal loan. This is a loan through Minnesota. Again, this is for students like, I've already taken out all my loans, or I didn't qualify for loans. Like, what am I supposed to do? State of Minnesota wants to help you. And they also pay the interest while you are in school. So they kind of promote it as, if you take out, this loan versus, let's say, a private loan, our interest rate is going to be smaller. And so this is another option for students attending college in Minnesota at least half time. And yes, you do have to have a cosigner for this loan. What's important about the self-loan is that this is going to also, I believe this catches students who are DACA students, so the Dreamer students who are not eligible to fill out the FAFSA. Some other additional Minnesota options, again, that Minnesota state grants we talked about, the state work study, so that job at school, and then again, we have tuition reciprocity, so North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and then we've got one place in Manitoba, which that was new to me when I learned about reciprocity. That means that students from any of these states can go to a different state with on this list and pay in-state tuition. I think it's pretty special that we have this in the Midwest, because I don't really know a lot of other places that do this. Kind of a general rule of thumb is, if I am a Minnesota student and I want to, like I said, go to Arizona, I'm going to pay way more as a student because I'm an out-of-state student. So I think what's especially cool with Minnesota and Wisconsin being so close to border states is that we can flip-flop and we can still both get the in-state tuition. So again, just know that these are options for funding your education. If you are saving for college, that's another way to pay for college, whether it's the student that's saving, whether it's the parent that's saving, AmeriCorps, the military. There are lots of different options for students, again, to help fund their education. We're going to quickly go over, now that we know what financial aid is and all those components, how do you get it? How do I apply for it? So generally speaking, in this part of the presentation, when I'm talking to students, we do a little bit more of a deeper dive on what the FAFSA is. But for the point of today, I just want everybody to know what it is. So the types of applications you're going to hear in Minnesota and Wisconsin is going to be the free application for federal student aid, which is FAFSA. The Minnesota DREAM Act application, which is for students who are not eligible to fill out the FAFSA. The CSS profile. And then scholarship application. So those are the four you're going to hear around here. I'm not going to spend too much time on each of them, but again, just letting you all know, this is how you apply. So if you are an eligible U.S. citizen, your student or yourself, if you're the student, you would fill out the FAFSA. The first word in the acronym free, it's free to fill out this form. You do not pay anything to fill out this form. Yes, this is a government form. Yes, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions about, how much money do you have right now? They ask you tax information. And the point of filling out a FAFSA for a student is to figure out, they use a federal methodology and they say, all right, based on your income, you're gonna get the Pell Grant. Based on your income, you're not gonna get the Pell Grant, right? So again, those families that make more money, their students probably not gonna get that Pell Grant. So also filling out the FAFSA opens the doors for a lot of those grants we talked about. Some scholarships, folks that run those scholarship programs, they require you to fill out the FAFSA because some scholarships are need-based. So if you have a FAFSA where I've got the Pell Grant, I'm going to get this much. Those needier students sometimes are going to get those opportunities to scholarships, but they have to prove that they actually filled this out because this is the only way for a college to really understand what they're dealing with as far as a person's finances rather. What are the benefits of filling this out? I get a lot of people that say, I make way too much money. We're not filling this out. Okay, I mean, that's great. If you're paying for college out of pocket, fine. However, your student isn't gonna have that opportunity to even see if they can get free money, see if they can get those grants. So the big kicker, $120 billion in grants, loans, and work study every single year. So this affects about 13 million college students each year. We know that the loans on student loans, for the federal loans, they're lower interest rate, right? It's going to be lower than taking out a private loan 9 times out of 10. And then there are some student loans that are forgivable, right? So we were just talking about a little bit about student loan forgiveness. What's going to happen? One of the student loan forgiveness programs that's been around, I think, since 2007, is the Public Student Loan Service Act, I think it's what it's called, sorry. And so it's folks who work in public service for 10 or more years that have been paying on their loans, they will be forgiven. All their loans will be forgiven because of the job that they're working. It is a job in the community and that's how they get forgiven, or public loan, public service, sorry. So for example, I work in a nonprofit that provides, I'm basically after 10 years, I could get my loans, sorry, I just lost my train of thought, forgiven because of where I work. If I paid on them for 10 years and I was employed for 10 years. So it really depends on where you work. But if you take out a personal loan, let's say you do it at the bank here, you probably aren't going to tell a student like, oh, we're just going to forgive your loan because you've been paying on it for 10 years, right? So, it would be great, but that's not going to happen with that. You're not going to get that opportunity with a private loan versus a federal loan, right? So not all students have an opportunity to be forgiven aside from what we just talked about, this is how it usually works. The student loan forgiveness is part of that program.
And the only way to apply for the federal student loans
is by completing the FAFSA. Exactly, you've got to complete it. I will tell you, if you are a parent or a student who is going to be starting college this year in the fall, that your student is starting next year in the fall, so 2023, the FAFSA application opens October 1st of every single year. And they have to fill it out every single year. So it's going to be a hot topic in October. Just quickly want to talk about the Minnesota Dream application. Again, this is just an application for students who are not eligible to fill out the FAFSA. Minnesota has a different option for them to help finance and pay for school. The benefits of this, again, it's helping the in-state tuition rates at Minnesota colleges. They're able to get money just like someone with the FAFSA. So they just have a little bit of different way of doing it, and that's it. The CSS profile, we talked about this briefly. This is the third one that you might hear of. To be honest, this application is only used, I think, well, for sure, for 4 colleges in Minnesota, and I think there's 3 in Wisconsin that use this. So it's not super common, but there are schools that require, colleges that require a student to fill out this in addition to FAFSA. There is a cost to do that. We don't have to go over it a lot, but just so you know, there's a cost for students to fill that out. And lastly, if you're a parent and you've got someone going to school, or if you're a grandparent, whatever you are, it's really important, I think, to have that awkward conversation with your student about money. It's not probably easy for a student to talk to their parents about money. So parents, maybe start the conversation. Hey, college is coming up in a few years. If you thought about how we're going to pay for that, you know, if you are a parent that has like a 529 savings plan or something like that, maybe you can tell your kid like, hey, I've got X amount for you, but you're going to have to take out loans, or you're going to have to work on scholarships. Just kind of get that conversation started. And as a parent, like, are you able to contribute? Some parents can't contribute at all. I know for a fact, I grew up on one income. My dad, who's a blue collar worker, and when it came time for me to go to college, my parents had already had a conversation with all 3 girls, and he said, we can't afford to pay for all 3 of you to go to college. We'll help you out the best we can, but we just can't afford it. It's going to be on you. And I'm like, okay. And so my parents, they weren't able to pay for my tuition, but they did offer me a place to stay when I went to community college. So I lived at home for free. So saved a bunch of money in room and board and food. And my mom paid for my books. So, you know, it was helpful, but the rest was on me. This is my education. It's not my parents' education, right? And they helped me with what they could. Some students are more fortunate. Some parents can pay for the whole thing. I just wasn't one of those students. So students too, it's important to talk to your parents. Like, are you going to help me at all? Like, what do I need to do? And this is where you can talk about, well, there's loans you can take out, there's scholarships you can apply for. So just kind of having that conversation with students that are kind of getting to that college age. Yeah, just kind of the same stuff. Also, you know, with your student, how much are you willing to borrow? Like, you know, when you talk about loans with your kids, you have to pay that money back, right? Like when you get out of school at 24, 26, however old you are, you know, how much is your payment going to be? Are you going to be able to afford that? You know, there's some statistics out there right now that student loans have heavily impacted millennials, in that when students are graduating, they can't afford a home because their income to debt ratio is too high. They have way high student loans and they can't afford a mortgage. If that's not going to do something to the housing market, I don't know what is, but you might see more students renting because of that, right? Because they can't afford a home and everything that goes with it. So yeah, those are just kind of important things you could talk with your student about. So just to review, like I said, we went over so much stuff today. It's kind of dry sometimes. Just remember there's 3 different components to financial aid. There's the free money, which is the grants and scholarships. There is the earned money, which is the work, study, and or military options. And then finally, the one that you borrow or you must repay, which are all those loans that we talked about. And with that, I just want to make sure that you all know, again, high school counselors are a great place to start when you're talking about college, whether it's scholarships, you know, things that they're aware of, like in the community is great. The College and Career Center at colleges, they're there to help you. They want to help you. Our federal aid number is listed as well for people who are doing FAFSA. And then we also have a website at the bottom. Again, I will make sure to send all these resources to you. I'll also include my information on the email, so if any of you want to contact me for any reason at all. But this is basically the end of the presentation. That is a QR code for students to fill out. If you're not a student and want to do it for your student, you certainly can, but what this does is it gets them on my email list, and I email them once a month with a whole bunch of scholarship opportunities. So with that and all that information we just went over, I really want to open it up to questions.
I got a quick one.
Yes.
The federal student loans, the student builds credit when they take out the loan to help build their credit score.
I think it a little bit, but gosh, I don't think it's that impactful as like a regular loan. Yeah. And I also know that, like, you know, when you talk to someone in finance, they'll tell you usually that student loans are looked upon as like a good debt, if you will, versus, you know, like credit card debt is like not the best debt, right? But student loan debt, it's pretty normal, right? A lot of people have it. So what other questions? No? Wow. You can do comments too, whatever you want. Yeah.
From your perspective, you're working with a lot of students. How much of a barrier does just the tuition dollars, those big dollars have it, and really discouraging somebody to even like start the process? Maybe their parents didn't go to college, maybe they don't, you know, have a network that has gone through that process before? And how much does the cost just turn people off?
That's a really great question. So students who have not had a parent go to, or either parent go to a four-year college or university are known as first-generation students. That's a term that was new to me when I started this work. I'm actually a first-generation student myself. So my parents did not go to a four-year college. And for the high school that I went to, I would have thought I would have had some more information like about FAFSA or scholarships or anything like that. Nothing. So I was kind of one of those students, right? I'm like, what the heck am I gonna do? You know, my parents haven't done this before. I only had a couple friends that had just started college. You know, what do they know? So what I think when I'm really helping students, number one, I can put myself in their shoes, which I think is really helpful. If I need to kind of talk about something more in detail or break something down, let's do it. Number two, I think it's really important to show students what they're getting themselves into. So whether it is a deterrent, right, if that scares you how much college costs, again, nothing is free, right? You've got to pay for a car, you've got to pay for a house, you've got to pay for your education. So I don't, sometimes, you know, you get the huge eyes when you like put up that like, oh my God, it costs that much money. It does. But then really kind of coming back to what we just talked about, yep, that's the price tag. It's probably not what you're gonna actually pay out of pocket. However, here are all the different resources for you. Here are the applications. How can I help you navigate a way for college to be affordable to you?
Is there any resources that you guys have or your organization provide to help educate people when they're looking at maybe majors or their future
Yeah.
state, right? To kind of say, okay, this would be a better structure if you're going to go into X, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So ECMC, we have a couple things that really, like when I'm working with a student for the first time, I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Let's take a career assessment test. Let's do a personality test. So those are things I can administer. And we do have a kind of a worksheet or a resource, if you will. It's called like choosing the right college, which kind of gets students kind of think like, what am I supposed to be looking for? In addition to that, sorry, the, I just completely lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. Oh, the resources on, what was the second half of your question?
Oh, just, I think like you said, as you look at some of these debts
Oh,
coming out.
yeah, sorry, it's coming back to me.
Going into.
Yes.
The
Yes.
benefit of-
So the state of Minnesota actually has, I think it's the Office of Higher Education has a great tool. It's like a big kind of spreadsheet, if you will. It's in a PDF, and they have like not all majors, but a lot of the, you know, the business, accounting, kind of those general ones. They have them all on this list. And then below it are all the different colleges with like a little dot or an X that indicates like, if you want to go to accounting in Minnesota, here are the schools that offer majoring in accounting. So Office of Higher Education has that resource I'm happy to share with you. In addition to that, I use BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, a lot with students. They have what's called a career handbook. And so, for example, we'll pick a career, like I'll ask the student, like, what do you want to do? Or what's something that's interesting to you? We'll plug it in the search, and what it does is I can show students a summary of what that job is. What will you actually be doing every day? What kind of education do you need to get to that career, or what's expected? It also will show them what's the job outlook in 10 years for this job. Is there going to be work in Minnesota for me? So I like to use that tool as well. So when you have an idea, let's look and compare and contrast with these two tools. Where could you go to school? And again, if you're not sure what you want to do even, let's go to the bls.gov and let's look at what your salary would be. Let's look at all these things. They also, when you pick, let's just say like carpentry, if you like read the summary and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that, but kind of what I want to do, they also have a tab that's like careers that are in the same kind of area, right? So if you're like, I don't want to be a carpenter, and then there's a whole page of like, oh, but here's our other things within that. So yeah, I will share those as well. Yeah.
At what age or grade level do you recommend students come see you for the first time?
That's a good question. I serve as low as middle school students. They're not as maybe like thinking about college as much. Some of the things I do with middle schoolers, we'll do a financial literacy game where they have to like figure out, they have to pretend they're 28 years old and essentially like go and shop with a salary to figure out like, how much, like where they're gonna live, how much it's gonna pay, or how much it's gonna cost, what are you gonna drive, and things like that. So that's just to kind of get them thinking about money, and like it opens a lot of kids' eyes up, if you will. Like my favorite one was, I didn't know you had to pay for internet. Yep, gotta pay for internet. So, because they're at like they're at a different learning age, right? But 9th to 12th graders are what I generally serve as far as when we're really like getting serious about talking to college. But I help any student of any age. So if you're 56 years old and you want to go to college, you can come and talk to me.
And are they all one-on-one or are there group sessions?
Good question. I do one-on-one with students and parents as well as group sessions like this. It just really depends on who needs help and what works best for them. I started this role during COVID, and so previously speaking, everything I was supposed to do was in person. And to be honest, the virtual world has really opened up availability for folks as far as like they're more willing to jump on a Zoom call in the middle of work instead of meeting me somewhere. And to be honest, I actually am able to serve more students when we do one-on-ones on Zoom, just because I can like have back-to-back appointments instead of like driving from here to here to here. But it really just depends on the audience and what works best for you. Did you have a question
I
before?
was just gonna say, do you have an opinion on people taking out a second mortgage to pay for tuition? Because I know people that's just done that.
I mean, I guess it would really depend on the interest rate, right? Like what is your interest rate on your mortgage? I guess I don't know if I have an opinion. My opinion is always going to be that I would encourage students to go for the free money first and then do the federal student loans because of the interest rate, because there is a small chance, depending on your profession, that they would be forgiven. But the mortgage, just like a personal loan, I would probably have to say that would be like your last resort, right?
And student loans are discharged if there's unexpected debt.
I believe so, yes.
Indirect
Yep.
insurance policy.
And then also if you as the borrower, or if you had a Parent Plus loan, either the borrower or parents, if they become disabled, there are also some forgiveness eligibility for folks who become disabled as well.
And you're free resources, so as a community bank, we could promote you and we could
Mhm.
make a connection there.
Absolutely. If you want me to,
Reach out.
yep, if your audience is like, we want to know more about scholarships, I can come in here and do a whole presentation on scholarships. I was telling Beth that I would plug this, although we don't have the dates yet. I will be partnering with Office of Higher Education Minnesota as well as Department of Education Minnesota. Again, this year, we are going to be putting on a financial aid series webinar that will be virtual, and anyone is welcome to join. We do say it is for Minnesota students because like today, you know, we highlight some of those Minnesota grants and such. It's free, and you'll have to hear my voice again, but I will also have someone else presenting with me. We did it for the first time actually in February, and we got really good feedback. At times we had over 700 people on the call. It was a mix of educators, students, as well as parents just wanting to know, like, what the heck am I supposed to be doing at this time, right? And so we did a deep dive of FAFSA on one night. We did a whole presentation on like what financial aid is, right? Like before we do the application, let's figure out what it is. We did a whole section on scholarships. We also did the Minnesota Dream Act. And then we also did one more, which was how to kind of, when you get an offer letter, like when you get your college letter and it says this is how much it's going to cost to go, how do you really decipher that? And how do you compare with another college? So we will be doing that series again in October, and I will be happy to communicate when that is happening if y'all and or this community is interested in just, again, it's all about really learning, right? It's never too young to learn about the options. You might not be there right now, or your kids might not be there right now, but know that there are lots of options. Anything else?
No, sorry, no question.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you everyone who joined in person and virtually today. As you all know, we have a monthly educational series that we're doing virtually. The topic changes every month. You can visit fsbt.com to get more information. Our next series will be in August. It'll be Tom Honig, and he'll be speaking on the state of the U.S. economy. So thank you again to everybody. More importantly, thank you to Tara so much. It was awesome information. We really appreciate it and hope to see you all next month.
Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
know.